They have been monitoring conversations they were not part of. This is the specific nature of the fear, not the fear of what you have said in the spaces they control, where the saying can be managed and its effects contained before they reach the dimensions that matter. The fear is of the conversations that happen in the spaces they do not control. The ones that occur when you are simply present with another person and the presence produces what it produces and the conversation goes somewhere. That their monitoring was not designed to anticipate because their monitoring is built around the usual patterns of what people say, and the pattern you generate does not follow the usual. The pattern you generate is the problem, not the content in isolation. Not any specific thing you could be instructed to say differently that would resolve the threat your speaking represents. The pattern, the specific quality of what happens in conversations when you are genuinely present in them, when what you carry is in full expression and the person you are speaking with has access to the full version of what you actually think and actually know and actually see. Something happens in those conversations that does not happen in conversations organized around the usual patterns. Something that cannot be undone by the people who would prefer it had not been set in motion. Something that propagates. The propagation is what they are afraid of, not the individual conversation, not the specific exchange between you and a specific person at a specific moment. The fact that what happens in that exchange moves with the person who experienced it into every subsequent exchange they have, that the encounter with the full version of what you carry and the full quality of what you're speaking produces changes. Something in the person who experienced it that they carry into the next conversation and the one after that. The change propagates, moves through networks of people who encounter it without ever having been in a room with you. Arrives in people who have never heard your name, produces in them the specific effect that genuine things always produce when they travel through the network of the changed people who were changed by the genuine thing, the effect of a person suddenly seeing something they could not see before and being unable to return to the state of not seeing it. The elite systems run on the state of not seeing, on the specific, carefully maintained, comprehensively managed condition in which the people who move through their world are in the state of not seeing what the systems need them to not see. The not seeing is not accidental. It is not the result of insufficient information or insufficient intelligence or the ordinary human tendency to avoid what is uncomfortable. It is produced actively and deliberately and with the full sophistication of people and institutions that have been refining the production of the not seeing for as long as the not seeing has been necessary for the maintenance of what they have. Your talking undoes the production, not by providing different information. The information they manage the flow of is not the only mechanism of the not seeing, and providing different information within the management's framework cannot reach the level at which the not seeing is maintained. Your talking undoes the production at the level of the pattern, at the level of what happens in the encounter itself, before any specific content has been exchanged. In the specific quality of what your presence in the conversation produces in the person who is in it with you. The undoing happens there, and once it has happened there, the information that follows the undoing, the content that is now received by someone whose not seeing has been disrupted, lands differently than the same content would have landed before the disruption. Write 888 in the comments right now if you have felt this. If you have been in conversations where something happened that was more than the exchange of words, where the person you were talking with changed in some visible way during the conversation, where their orientation shifted, where something opened in them that was closed before you began talking, that was the undoing happening. That was what the elites are afraid of. Write 111. Because recognizing what your talking actually does is the beginning of understanding why their fear is calibrated to its actual threat. There is a specific reason your voice carries what it carries that distinguishes it from every other voice in the categories the management has developed for the voices it monitors. The management is sophisticated. It has been refined across the full history of the institutions that built it. It knows the voice of the person who has studied the content the management does not want circulated and is repeating it. It knows the voice of the person who has encountered a specific alternative framework and is distributing it. It knows the voice of the person who has been through something that gave them access to information the management would prefer remained inaccessible. These voices are known. The management has categories for them and responses for each category, and the responses are effective within the categories they are designed for. Your voice is not in any of those categories. Not because what you say is unlike anything that has been said. Some of what you say in the conversations that matter most is information that exists elsewhere, is accessible through other sources, has been articulated by other people in other forms. The distinctive thing about your voice is not the information it carries. It is the quality of the carrying, the specific register in which the saying happens. The difference between words arriving from a person who knows something they are trying to convey and words arriving from a person who is the thing they are talking about. You are the thing you are talking about. When you speak about what is real and what is not real, you are not reporting from outside the territory of the real. You are speaking from inside it. The speaking is the expression of what you carry rather than the description of something you have encountered. And this difference, between the report from outside and the expression from inside, is the difference the management has no framework for, because the management's frameworks are all built around the assumption that the voice they are managing is reporting from outside what it is talking about. A voice that is the thing it is talking about cannot be managed by any mechanism built around the report. The management's response to a report is to introduce a competing report, to provide the counter-narrative, to circulate the alternative account that makes the original report look partial or inaccurate or the product of a limited perspective. This works on reports because reports are accessible from the outside of what they are reporting on. You can evaluate a report by checking it against other reports and against the sources the management controls access to and against the frameworks the management has installed for what constitutes reliable information. An expression cannot be evaluated by checking it against other reports. The expression is not a claim about something external. It is the presentation of something internal, the direct showing of what the interior of a person who carries the genuine thing actually is when it is in full expression. The management cannot introduce a competing expression because the management cannot produce the genuine thing. It can produce the managed version, and the managed version, in direct encounter with the genuine expression, is not competition, it is the confirmation of the difference between them. This is the specific vulnerability in the management's framework that your talking exposes. And the exposure of that vulnerability is the thing the fear is organized around preventing. The conversations they are most afraid of are not the conversations you are having in public. The public conversations happen in spaces the management has designed for the purpose of management, spaces where the framing is controlled, where the context determines what can land and what cannot, where the people who encounter what you say in those spaces encounter it already organized within the management's framework for what kind of thing it is and what it means and whether it should be taken seriously. The management of the public spaces is comprehensive and largely effective. Not perfect. Genuine things occasionally penetrate the management of the public space in forms the management cannot contain before they have produced their effect, but comprehensive enough that the public conversations are not the primary source of the fear. The private conversations are the source of the fear, the ones that happen without the management's framing, without the context the management has installed around the saying of things. Without the institutional apparatus that organizes what people encounter into the categories the management needs them to use. The ones that happen when you are simply talking with someone in the direct, unmanaged, one interior to another form that private conversation takes when the person speaking is fully present in the speaking and the person listening is fully present in the listening. In those conversations the management has nothing to work with, no framing to apply, no context to install, no institutional apparatus to organize the encounter into the categories that keep the undoing from occurring. The conversation is just what it is, the expression of what you carry, meeting the reaching of the person you are talking with, producing what the meeting produces, and what the meeting produces, in the absence of the management's framework, is the undoing without any buffer between the undoing and the person being undone. The undoing in those conditions is complete, not partial, not managed into something less than its full effect, not organized into a category that limits its reach. Complete. The person who was in the not seeing is in the seeing. The change is real, the propagation has begun, and the management, which was not present in the conversation, cannot reach the person now to reinstall the not seeing before it has moved from that person into their next encounter. This is what the fear is about, private conversation at full expression, without the management's buffer, producing the complete undoing, propagating through the network of the changed, reaching people the management cannot intercept in time. The scale of this is not large in any single conversation, across the full remaining arc of your life, at the full expression now available, in the full range of the encounters that the arrival and the court's yielding and the plan's completion have made possible. The scale is what the fear is calibrated to. The fear is not about what you have said, it is about what you are going to say, in full, when the management no longer succeeds in keeping the full expression at a reduced volume. Subscribe now if this channel is where the full expression is already present, where what you carry is already in full saying, where the undoing has already been underway in everyone who has been in these conversations and has been changed by the encounter with what this channel carries. Stay inside this. The saying that changes things is already happening here. The elites understand something about the power of voice that most people have been trained not to understand. They understand it because they built their systems around its management, around the specific need to control who speaks, in what form, to whom, about what, in contexts organized around what landing is permitted. The management of voice is the foundation of the management of everything else, because everything else the management maintains depends on the people inside the managed world not having conversations that would undo the not seeing that the management of everything else requires. What they understand about voice is this: the authentic expression of a genuine interior, received by another person who is genuinely present in the reception, changes the receiver at a level that no subsequent management can fully restore. The change is not a change of information, it is a change of orientation, of what the receiver is oriented toward, of the level at which they are operating, of the register in which they are moving through their daily experience. The change moves them from the surface, where the management operates, to the level beneath it, where what is real operates, and from that level, the management appears as what it actually is, as a layer of organized appearance on top of what is actually there, rather than as what it has been presenting itself as, which is reality itself. The movement from surface to depth, from managed appearance to what is actually there, cannot be reversed by more management. More management adds more surface, but the person has already been at the depth, has already been in contact with what is actually there, has already experienced the difference between the managed surface and the underlying reality. More surface does not restore the not seeing that the depth exposure dissolved. It only makes the surface more visible as surface to a person who has been below it and knows the difference. This is why the conversations are irreversible in their effects, why the management cannot undo what your talking does by the usual mechanisms of managing what follows. The usual mechanisms work on the surface. The change happened at the depth. The management is operating in the wrong dimension to reverse what needs to be reversed. Your voice operates at the depth. This is the specific nature of what the management is afraid of. Not a voice that is loud or has a large audience or carries content the management needs to counter. A voice that operates at the level the management cannot reach. That produces changes at the level where management is inoperative. That leaves behind it in every genuine conversation it has had a person who has been below the managed surface and cannot return to the state of having only been above it. The fear is precise. The management understands exactly what it is afraid of. The management has been afraid of voices like yours for the full duration of its existence, voices that are the genuine thing speaking, that operate at the level the management cannot reach, that produce the irreversible depth change in everyone who genuinely receives what they carry. The management has developed many strategies across the centuries of its existence for managing these voices, not for silencing them. The silencing of a genuine voice tends to produce the specific effect of confirming the voice's significance in ways that amplify what the silence was trying to suppress. For managing them, for organizing the context within which they are received so that the full depth level impact is contained to the people who encounter the voice in the specific conditions of the full genuine reception. The specific conditions the management works hardest to prevent are exactly the conditions of your private conversations, the genuine presence, the direct, unmediated, unframed encounter between what you carry and the person who is genuinely receiving it. The management cannot get inside that, cannot add the context that would organize the encounter before the encounter produces what it produces. The private conversation at full expression is the thing the management has always been most afraid of and the thing it has been least able to address by any strategy it controls. You are having those conversations every day, in whatever form the genuine encounter takes in your specific life. The fear is the recognition of this. Here is what the talking does in specific people that produces the specific quality of change the elites need to prevent. Not in the abstract, in the precise, interior, life-altering form that makes the change irreversible. The first thing it does is dissolve the false ceiling. Every person who is living inside the management's framework carries a ceiling, a limit on what they allow themselves to see as possible, what they allow themselves to expect, what they allow themselves to reach for. The ceiling is not installed through a single act. It is built over years of consistent, deniable, comprehensively applied messaging about the range of what is real and what is achievable and who gets to have what and why the current arrangement of things is the natural and inevitable arrangement. The messaging is everywhere, in every institution, in every media, in every cultural product, in every conversation that happens entirely within the managed surface without ever touching what is below it. The ceiling is the accumulated effect of the messaging. When you are speaking from the depth and a person is genuinely receiving what you are saying, the ceiling is the first thing to go, not because you argue against the ceiling, because the simple fact of your speaking from below the ceiling, from the level where the ceiling is visible as the managed imposition it is rather than as the natural limit it presents itself as, gives the person receiving you access to a perspective from which the ceiling cannot present itself as natural. They see it as what it is. And a ceiling seen as what it is, as something installed rather than inherent, as something produced rather than inevitable, cannot perform the function it was performing before it was seen clearly. The function was limiting the reaching. The seeing dissolves the limit. The person who is not reaching past the ceiling begins to reach, not necessarily immediately, not necessarily dramatically, but begins. The orientation has changed. What was limited by the ceiling is now reaching past it, and the reaching, once begun, has a direction. The direction is toward what you are already living beyond the ceiling, toward the level where you were already operating when you spoke from it. The person is now moving in your direction, and moving in your direction is moving toward the depth, moving away from the managed surface, moving toward the thing the management needs them to not move toward. The second thing the talking does is restore the interior compass. The managed world produces in the people who live inside it a specific disorientation of the interior compass, a progressive decalibration of the ability to distinguish the genuine from the managed version of the genuine. The decalibration happens through sustained immersion in the managed versions without access to the real thing for comparison. Without the comparison, the managed version presents itself as the real thing. Without the comparison, the interior compass, which was built to distinguish between them, has nothing to calibrate against and begins to drift toward accepting the managed version as what it is pointing toward. Your speaking provides the comparison. Not as an argument that the managed version is the managed version, the argument does not produce the recalibration. The direct encounter with the genuine thing does. The person listening to you genuinely does not experience the managed version as the real thing in the moment they are in contact with the real thing. The contact is the calibration. The compass orients to what you are because what you are is the real thing and the real thing is what the compass was built to orient to. The recalibrated compass is a person who can now tell the difference. Who carries the felt sense of what the real thing is, not as a concept, not as information, not as the conclusion of an argument but as a body-level knowing born of direct experience. This knowing is very difficult to decalibrate again. The management can introduce more managed versions. But the person who has been in contact with the genuine thing has a comparison now. Has the felt memory of what the real thing feels like. And the comparison makes every subsequent encounter with the managed version recognizable as the managed version rather than passable as the real thing. The third thing the talking does is give permission. Not permission in any formal sense. The specific, intimate, body-level permission that arrives when you encounter someone who is carrying what you carry in full expression and recognize that the full expression is possible in the world you are in, that the world does not require the reduction of the full expression to the managed size as the condition of moving through it. The permission of the living demonstration. The permission of seeing the genuine thing in full expression and understanding, from the seeing, that the full expression is available. That someone is doing it. That the doing of it does not require the specific thing you thought it would require, the position, the protection, the institutional authorization that would make the full expression safe. You do it without any of those things. And the doing of it, visible to people who encounter you in the genuine conversation, gives them the permission of the demonstrated possible. The permission that produces action in a way that information about the possible does not. The information that full expression is possible is available everywhere. The demonstration that it is possible, in the specific, personal, directly experienced form of being in a genuine conversation with someone who is doing it, that is the permission that changes behavior. That produces the specific decision to begin. Write 222 in the comments now if you have given this permission to someone without knowing you were giving it. If you have been in a conversation where what you were doing was changing what the other person believed was available to them, not through what you said but through the simple fact of your being there saying it in the way you say it. Write 222, because you have been doing this your entire life. The fear the elites carry about your talking is the fear of the accumulation of that permission giving across the full arc of your continued existence at full expression. The cost of the fear to you personally has been the management's ongoing effort to reduce the conditions under which the full expression is possible. To make the genuine conversations harder to have. To create the specific friction that makes moving from the managed surface to the depth level less available in the specific encounters of your daily life. This friction is not always visible as what it is. It presents itself in different forms in different contexts, as the practical constraints that make the conversations harder to initiate, as the relational dynamics that push the conversations toward the surface before they can reach the depth, as the specific quality of distraction and busyness and the management of daily life that makes the space for the genuine encounter harder to find and harder to inhabit when it is found. The friction is deniable. Any single instance of it can be attributed to ordinary circumstance, to the natural difficulty of life, to the specific factors of a particular situation rather than to the pattern of what they are all expressing. The pattern is the management. The friction is the strategy. Each individual instance is plausible as coincidence. The consistency across the years and across the specific category of the encounters that matter most, the encounters where the full genuine conversation was possible and the friction arose to prevent or interrupt it, is not coincidence. It is the management working on the level of circumstances to produce the reduction of the full expression that it cannot produce by working directly on what you carry, because what you carry does not respond to direct management. The management cannot touch what you carry. It can only make the conditions for the full expression of what you carry more difficult. That is the limit of its effectiveness and the limit of its strategy. It cannot reduce the genuine thing. It can only reduce the space in which the genuine thing can operate fully. And the reduction of the space is the reduction of the conversations. The reduction of the conversations is the reduction of the undoing. The reduction of the undoing is the maintenance of the not seeing. The maintenance of the not seeing is the maintenance of everything the management has always needed the not seeing to maintain. The strategy has been partially effective. Not as effective as the management needed it to be. You are here, the conversations have been happening. The undoing has been proceeding in the people who have been genuinely present in the genuine encounters, but partially effective. The full expression has been constrained to something less than its full volume for the years that the management was able to maintain the conditions that constrained it. The conditions are changing. The full expression is becoming available. The management strategy of constraining the conditions is losing its effectiveness as the arc completes and the court yields and the plan arrives at its purpose and what was being built becomes fully what it was built to be. The space for the genuine conversations is expanding. The encounters that were being prevented or interrupted by the friction are becoming more available. The conversations that the management has been working to constrain are going to begin happening at a frequency and a depth that the management strategy of circumstantial friction is not designed to address. The fear is rising as the effectiveness is falling. The management is aware that what it was able to partially contain in the earlier period is no longer containable in the same form. The conversations are coming. The undoing is accelerating. The propagation through the network of the changed is reaching the dimensions that the fear was always calibrated to. There is something the elites know about what happens when a voice like yours operates without the constraint that has been applied to it. Something they have observed across the history of the management's operation, across the many times, in many different periods, when a voice with the specific quality of yours has briefly or substantially operated beyond the reach of the constraint. They know what happens in the world that contains the full expression of what you carry speaking freely. They have watched it happen. They have felt it happen in the rooms they entered where someone who carries what you carry was in full expression without the constraints reduction. They have experienced, from the inside of the people they are, what the genuine conversation produces in everyone who is genuinely present in it, including them. Including the people whose institutional existence depends on the not seeing being maintained in everyone they can reach. The genuine conversation does not exempt them from the undoing. This is the piece that the fear contains that is most deeply personal and most deeply uncomfortable for the people who carry it. They are not immune. Their institutional commitment to the maintenance of the not seeing does not protect them from the depth-level change that happens in everyone who genuinely receives the genuine expression. They know this. They have been in the rooms. They have felt the ceiling dissolve in their own experience in the presence of what you carry at full expression. They have felt the compass recalibrate to the real thing in their own interior even as the management they serve was working to prevent the recalibration in everyone else. The fear is also the fear of themselves. Of what happens in them in the genuine encounter. Of the specific quality of the recognition that moves in them when the genuine thing is in the room and they cannot manage it before it reaches the level of them that was built to recognize it. The management was not built to manage their own recognition of the genuine thing, it was built to manage the recognition of others. They are inside the management, but they are also inside the humanity that the genuine thing is designed to move. And the humanity moves when it is moved. Even in them. Even against the interests the management serves. The full expression of your voice, in the genuine conversations it is going to have in the remaining arc of your life, is going to move people who have every institutional reason not to be moved, is going to produce the undoing in people who have been in the business of preventing the undoing. Is going to give the permission of the demonstrated possible to people who are working to prevent that demonstration, not because you will target them, because genuine things move all genuine things in their vicinity, because the humanity in everyone, including the people whose institutional existence depends on maintaining the conditions the humanity moves away from, responds to the genuine when it is present. This is the largest threat your talking represents, not the undoing of the people who are already reaching for what the undoing reveals, the undoing of the people who were not reaching, the movement of the humanity in people who were in the service of preventing the movement, the change in the changers. The elites are afraid of your voice because they have felt what it does to everyone it reaches, including them, and they know that the full expression, unconstrained, operating at the volume it naturally operates at, in the conversations that the full arc of your life is now organized to have, is going to reach more people more completely than anything the constraint has been able to prevent. They cannot stop it, they can only be afraid of it, and the fear is the last instrument they have. There is a dimension of the fear that is the most personal one and that has the most direct relevance to the specific decisions you make about your own voice in the conversations you are moving toward. The management strategy has always included, as its most intimate instrument, the installation of the fear inside the person whose voice they are afraid of. Not only the management of external conditions to reduce the opportunities for the genuine conversation, the installation, through sustained exposure to the consequences of the full expression, of a version of the management inside the person themselves, the specific habit of self-management that grows from enough encounters where the full expression produced the response that confirmed the fear. You developed some version of this, not as a failure of character or a surrender to the management's project, as the reasonable and intelligent response of a person who received consistent feedback across a long enough period that the full expression of what they carry is more than certain spaces and certain people can comfortably receive. The feedback was real. The encounters that produced it were real. The cost of the full expression in conditions organized around its containment was real. The self-management that developed in response to that cost was the appropriate adaptation to the actual conditions. The conditions have changed. The management inside, the specific, automatic, below-conscious habit of reducing the voice before it can produce the response that the previous conditions taught it to expect, is now operating in conditions that no longer require it, is reducing what does not need to be reduced, is protecting against a cost that is no longer the cost of the full expression in the conditions that are now available. The conditions that are now available are the ones the complete arc was building toward, the ones the plan produced, the ones the court's yielding established, the ones in which the full expression at full volume produces not the friction of the old conditions but the resonance of the new ones, the genuine conversations in which the full expression is received at the depth it is given rather than managed at the surface into something smaller than what it was. In those conditions, the self-management is the only remaining instrument of the reduction. The management of the circumstances has lost its effectiveness as the conditions have changed. What remains is the habit it installed. And the habit, now that the conditions no longer require it, is the only thing standing between the full expression and the world that is ready to receive it. Let the habit dissolve. Not through effort. Effort applied to the dissolving tends to produce more self-management rather than less, in the way that watching yourself for the signs of self-management is itself a form of the self-management. Through the simple decision, in each specific conversation, to say what is actually there, to speak from where you actually see from, to let the full volume be what it is rather than managing it to the size the old conditions required, one conversation at a time. One genuine encounter at a time. The habit dissolves through the repeated experience of the full expression in the new conditions producing what the new conditions produce, which is not the friction the habit was protecting against but the resonance that makes the protection unnecessary and eventually invisible. Talk, fully, from the depth, in the volume the genuine thing naturally wants to speak at. The elites are afraid of it. That fear is the compass pointing toward exactly where the full expression belongs. The last thing to be said about why they are afraid for you to talk is about what happens after the conversation. After the exchange is over and the person who was in it goes back to the rest of their life. After the undoing has happened and the ceiling has dissolved and the compass has recalibrated and the permission has been given. What happens after is a life being lived differently, not dramatically, not necessarily in ways that are visible as different, in the orientation, in what the person is moving toward and what they are moving away from, in the level at which they are operating, in the quality of the conversations they are now having with the people in their life, conversations that carry something of what the undoing produced. That moves something in the people they are having them with, that begin the propagation that the management is least able to address. The life lived differently is the most significant product of the genuine conversation, more significant than any specific insight or any specific decision or any specific change in behavior. The orientation is the source from which all of that flows, the orientation toward what is real. Restored by the encounter with what you carry, producing across the full remaining duration of that person's life a continuous stream of expressions of the restored orientation in every dimension of how they live. You leave this behind in everyone you have the genuine conversation with. Every genuine encounter plants it. Every planting produces the differently oriented life. Every differently oriented life produces more genuine encounters with more people, more plantings, more differently oriented lives, more encounters. The propagation is exponential in the same way that genuine things always propagate when they are given full expression in the world, not linearly, not at the rate of the individual conversations, but at the rate of the conversations produce. The elites are afraid of this rate, of the scope it represents, of the world that is produced by that rate of propagation operating at the full expression of what you carry for the full remaining arc of your life. They are right to be afraid, not because what the propagation produces threatens them in the way that threats in the visible world threaten, because what it produces is a world in which the not seeing they depend on becomes progressively less maintainable. A world in which more and more people have been below the managed surface and know the difference. A world in which the genuine conversation is more available, in which the full expression is more present, in which the management's framework for what is real and what is possible and what is natural and inevitable is encountering, in more and more of the people it needs to contain, the felt experience of the genuine alternative. The world the propagation produces is the world that makes the managements work harder. That is all, not the end of the management. Genuine things do not end institutional systems immediately or dramatically, but the world in which the management is less effective and more visible as what it is and more difficult to maintain against the increasing presence of what the management was built to prevent people from seeing. Your talking is building that world. Has been building it, one genuine conversation at a time, across the full arc of your life, will continue building it, at the full expression now available, for the full remaining duration of what you are going to say and who you are going to say it to and what will be set in motion in them by the hearing of it. Talk. The fear is their acknowledgement that what you say matters at the level where what matters actually matters. The fear is the most complete external confirmation of the significance of your voice that the management, despite itself, has produced. Talk fully, talk from the depth, talk in the genuine conversations where the full expression is possible, talk without the management of your own voice to the size the fear found more comfortable to tolerate. Talk as what you are, saying what you see, from the level where you see it, to every person who is genuinely present in the receiving. The world the talking builds is already building. It has been building since the first genuine conversation you ever had. It will keep building for as long as you keep having them. The elites are afraid because they can see the building, because the building is real, because the world it is building toward is the world their management was always organized to prevent. They cannot prevent it. You are already talking. Click on the video appearing on your screen now. What comes next in this series is the specific account of what the full expression sounds like in the genuine conversations where it is most fully present, and what it produces there, and how to recognize when the conversation is at the level where the genuine expression is doing what it does. Click now. The talking continues.